A cold wind swept down the steps of the Manhattan family court as Avery Sinclair stood motionless, her divorce papers trembling in her hand. She had imagined this day 1,000 different ways, but not like this, not with her ex-husband Grant Mercer laughing loudly behind her, his arm wrapped around the woman he'd left her for. People passing by turned their heads, some whispering, some pitying, some entertained by the scene unfolding on those gray courthouse stairs. Avery kept her chin up. Her cheeks burned, her eyes stung, but she would not give Grant the satisfaction of seeing a single tear. 4 years of silence, manipulation, and being told she was nothing without him had taught her one thing. Sometimes dignity is the only armor a woman has left. "Look at her," Grant scoffed to his mistress, loud enough for half the sidewalk to hear. "She thought she could walk away and survive on her own. She doesn't even have a job anymore." It's action. The words sliced through her, but Avery didn't turn around. She simply took one slow breath and stepped off the curb, determined to disappear into the crowded street before humiliation swallowed her whole. But the universe had other plans. A sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom, polished so sharply it mirrored the winter sky, pulled up to the curb with the quiet authority only old money possesses. The driver stepped out first, then opened the rear door with a precision that made the world pause. Avery froze. Grant stopped laughing, and the crowd, sensing something extraordinary, leaned in. Because stepping out of that car was Julian Colum, Manhattan's most elusive tech billionaire. A man seen more often on the cover of Forbes than on the streets. A man Avery had met only once but had never forgotten. He walked toward her as if he had been looking for her all this time. "Avery," he said gently, his voice grounding and steady, "you don't have to stand here another minute. Come with me." Grant's face drained of color. Avery's heart pounded. And then Julian extended his hand in front of everyone, as if offering her a second life. Avery stared at him, unsure whether to trust fate, until he quietly revealed he'd known about Grant's betrayal long before she did. For a moment, Avery wondered if her mind was playing tricks on her. The street noise, the honking cars, even Grant's mocking laughter, all of it faded beneath the weight of the figure stepping out of the Rolls-Royce. Julian Colum didn't just walk, he carried an aura that softened everything around him. His charcoal overcoat moved with the wind, his expression calm but unmistakably focused on her. It made no sense. They had met briefly, 2 years ago, during a design pitch. She was never allowed to finish because Grant had pulled her out halfway, claiming she was overwhelmed. She'd buried that humiliation deep, convincing herself Julian wouldn't have remembered the moment at all. Yet here he was, looking at her as if he'd been waiting for this exact second. "Avery," Julian repeated, his voice low enough to steady her trembling breath. "You don't have to stand in the cold for him. Not anymore. If you pressed him." Her pulse hammered. People were openly staring now. Someone pulled out a phone. Grant's mistress squeezed his arm, whispering nervously. Grant straightened his posture, trying to mask the shock on his face. "You know him?" Grant scoffed, though his voice cracked. "Since when does a billionaire pick up?" Julian's gaze snapped toward him, sharp as glass. "Since the day she impressed an entire boardroom with more talent than you could ever recognize," Julian said evenly. "A day you dragged her out like she didn't belong." A gasp rippled through the sidewalk. Avery felt her knees weaken, not from embarrassment this time, but from the sudden warmth of being defended openly, publicly, powerfully. Grant stepped forward, his bravado faltering. That pitch was a disaster. She wouldn't have survived in that world anyway. Avery is exactly the kind of person this city needs," Julian interrupted. "Hardworking, sharp, capable. Unfortunately, she was married to someone who feared her success." Grant's face flushed bright red. Avery wanted to speak, to explain, to defend herself, but words stuck in her throat. She had swallowed her own voice for years. Now she wasn't sure how to use it. Julian turned back to her. "I'm here because I heard what happened this morning. The firm you worked for received a message, one meant to sabotage you." His eyes softened. "And I know who sent it." Her stomach dropped. She had feared it, suspected it, but hearing it confirmed was like being struck by a slow-moving train. Grant stammered, "That's ridiculous. I don't know what lies she told you." "You don't have to lie," Julian said coldly. "I've seen the email." A murmur rose from the growing crowd. Avery's breath hitching, she managed, "Why? Why would you come for me?" Julian hesitated, choosing his words with care. Because no one deserves to walk away from a courthouse alone after being torn down by the person they trusted most. He stepped closer, offering his hand again, gentler this time. Let me take you somewhere warm, somewhere safe. Avery looked at his hand, then at Grant, whose confidence had drained into panic. For the first time in years, she felt the faint flicker of control returning to her chest. She didn't take Julian's hand yet. Her voice was soft but steady. You knew all along? Julian nodded once. Yes. And there's something else I need to tell you, something you were never supposed to find out. Avery's heart stopped as Julian leaned closer, preparing to reveal a truth that would change everything. Avery didn't know how her legs carried her, but somehow she found herself seated inside the back of the Rolls-Royce Phantom. The door shut with a soft thud that seemed to seal her away from the humiliation still echoing on the courthouse steps. The scent of leather, cedar, and something faintly like bergamot wrapped around her like a blanket. For the first time all morning, she felt her lungs fully expand. Julian sat across from her, his posture composed yet attentive. Through the tinted windows, Manhattan blurred past Fifth Avenue's winter-gray buildings, stretching upward like steel monuments. Avery's reflection stared back at her, tired eyes, wind-tangled hair, a fractured woman trying to piece together the last shreds of herself. You're safe now, Julian said softly, as if reading her thoughts. No cameras, no Grant, just breathe. She wished it were that simple. You said there was something I was never supposed to find out, Avery said quietly. What did you mean? Julian's jaw tightened. He looked toward the window for a moment, as though choosing his words carefully. 2 years ago, after your pitch, I reached out to your firm to request you personally for a private project, a large one. Avery blinked. I never heard about that. I know, Julian said. Your husband intercepted the request. The world tilted, a slow, nauseating spin. Julian continued, his voice steady but laced with anger on her behalf. He replied to my office under your email. Said you were stepping back due to emotional instability and couldn't handle high-pressure environments. He even signed your name. Avery's breath fractured. He used my voice to turn down work? He didn't want you working with anyone influential, Julian said, especially not someone who might see your value. Avery pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. She wanted to deny it, but it aligned too perfectly with the Grant she now recognized, controlling, insecure, terrified of being outshined by the woman he claimed to love. The city lights flickered across Julian's face as the car glided through a traffic stop. His eyes softened. I tried reaching out again. I even attended a gallery event, hoping to run into you. But every route I took kept circling back to him. He'd built walls around you, she whispered. I thought I was losing opportunities because I wasn't good enough. Julian leaned forward slightly. Avery, you were the most promising designer in that room. I don't forget talent, and I don't forget cruelty when I see it. Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken of her with such conviction before. The car turned, the glow of Upper Manhattan casting pale gold streaks across the seats. Avery wiped her eyes before the tears could fall. She didn't want Julian's pity. She wanted her life back. Why tell me all of this now? She asked. Because I didn't want you walking back into your life believing you were the problem, Julian said. You deserved the truth. The Phantom slowed, merging into the steady rhythm of Park Avenue. Avery looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in years, she felt seen. Julian hesitated before speaking again. There's something else too, something even Grant doesn't know, and it involves the project you were meant to lead. Avery's pulse quickened, a sharp flutter under her ribs. What project? She whispered. Julian met her eyes with a gravity that sent a chill down her spine. Avery, the project was never cancelled. It's still waiting, and it has your name on it. Ender. The Rolls-Royce eased into the quieter stretch of Park Avenue, where the winter sunlight reflected off towers of glass and steel. Avery swallowed hard, her fingers twisting together in her lap. She had spent years shrinking herself to fit inside Grant's shadow. Now Julian was telling her she'd been meant for something far bigger, something she never even knew existed. The project, she whispered. What was it? Julian exhaled slowly, leaning back against the leather seat. A redevelopment initiative. A full interior concept and spatial design overhaul for one of Manhattan's oldest cultural buildings. The kind of project architects dream of. the kind that builds careers from nothing. Avery's heart thudded painfully. You wanted me to lead that? I still do, Julian said. The board approved your name before the sabotage happened. Avery felt her breath hitch. But I never even got a chance to present. You were supposed to, Julian said. I had your portfolio reviewed privately. Not a single architect with twice your years could match your instinct for space and emotional storytelling. The project director, my father, actually chose you after seeing your sketches. Her eyes widened. Your father? Julian nodded. He said your designs had soul, something this city had forgotten. Avery pressed a hand over her mouth. She remembered those sketches. She'd drawn them late at night, when the world felt quiet, and Grant was too busy criticizing her to notice the hope still flickering inside her. But if the project was approved, Avery said slowly, why didn't they assign someone else after I pulled out? Julian's expression shifted, a mix of frustration and something darker. Because my father paused the project when he suspected something off. He didn't believe your email was genuine, especially after I told him about your husband dragging you out of the pitch. Avery blinked hard. He paused a multi-million-dollar redevelopment because of me. Because of integrity, Julian corrected gently. Something you were denied in your own home. Avery felt a sting behind her eyes. She had no idea anyone had fought for her, let alone someone like Julian, or a man as respected as his father. This city is full of people who pretend to care about talent, Julian continued, but very few recognize it before it becomes profitable. You were one of the rare ones. Avery shook her head slowly. Grant told me the industry didn't take me seriously, that no one wanted my work, that I needed to stay in my lane. Julian's eyes hardened. Grant knew exactly how valuable you were. Some men crush what they fear. A heavy silence fell between them. The Phantom rolled to a graceful stop at a red light, and sunlight washed across Avery's face. She suddenly felt exposed, not to judgment but to possibility, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself in years. I don't know if I can do it, she murmured. Not now, not after everything. Julian leaned forward, his voice quiet but steady. Avery, you don't have to believe in yourself yet. Let me believe in you until you do. Her breath trembled. No man had ever spoken to her like that. The light turned green. The car moved again. Julian reached into the inner pocket of his coat and withdrew a sleek black envelope. He placed it on the seat between them, its weight heavier than paper. This, he said, is something Grant never wanted you to see. Something that proves he wasn't just undermining your career, he was planning something far worse. Avery's fingers hovered over the envelope, heart hammering. Julian's eyes met hers, steady and unblinking. Open it, Avery. It's time you finally know what he stole from you. No. Avery's fingertips brushed the edge of the black envelope. Even before she opened it, she sensed the heaviness inside, not physical weight, but the weight of truth, the kind that could split a person's world down the center. The Phantom glided smoothly through the quiet stretch of Park Avenue, the hum of the engine steady beneath her breath. Her voice trembled. What is this? Julian watched her carefully, his expression gentler now, but undeniably firm. Proof, he said, of what he planned to do to you, and how far he went. Avery slid her thumb under the flap and opened the envelope. Her eyes moved across the first page, an email exchange, clearly printed. Her heart stuttered. It was Grant's name in the sender line. The recipient, the HR director at her old firm. Her hands shook as she read the words. Per our previous discussion, I strongly advise reconsidering Avery Sinclair's position. She has shown repeated emotional instability, unpredictable outbursts, and difficulty performing under pressure. Avery's breath caught. She blinked rapidly. She had never, not once, behaved that way at work. Another page. Another email. This one was worse. Grant had suggested she might pose a liability to the company and recommended transitioning her out quietly to avoid drama. A quiet termination. A silent erasure. He had tried to remove her from the industry entirely, not just from her job. Her stomach twisted painfully. He wanted me fired? Julian nodded. Yes. And not because of anything you did. Because he wanted to isolate you financially, emotionally, professionally. Her pulse roared in her ears. I thought the layoffs were just restructuring. They told me budget cuts. Julian shook his head slowly. There were no budget cuts, Avery. They told you that because they didn't want legal trouble. The firm was afraid you'd sue if you found out the truth. Avery pressed her hand over her mouth to stop the sob that threatened to escape. 4 years of gaslighting. 4 years of believing she was somehow not enough. 4 years of feeling small, unstable, incapable. And the whole time, it had been a script Grant wrote for her. He made me think I was failing, Avery whispered. He made you think what he needed you to think, Julian said softly. Men like him don't want a partner. They want someone they can control. Avery stared at the emails again, bitterness burning her throat. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had felt in court. This wasn't just cruelty, it was strategy. A deliberate dismantling of her self-worth. She looked up. How did you even get these? Julian hesitated, then spoke quietly. Someone inside the firm reached out to me. They knew what was happening was wrong. And they knew Grant had influence, but not enough to silence everyone. Someone? Avery asked. Who? Julian shook his head. I promised confidentiality, but they cared enough to protect you. Avery swallowed hard, overwhelmed. The world she believed in, her marriage, her work, her identity, had cracked open. And standing in the ruins was a truth she could no longer ignore. Grant hadn't just mistreated her. He had engineered her collapse. The Phantom slowed as it approached a row of elegant brownstones. Julian leaned slightly forward, his voice low and steady. Avery, I know this is a lot, but you needed to see what he took from you, and what you still have left. She nodded, unable to speak. Julian watched her for a long moment. There's one more document, he murmured, the one that changes everything. Avery's heart lurched. Julian reached into the envelope again, retrieving a final sheet, the one he warned would reveal Grant's worst betrayal yet. Avery stared at the final document in Julian's hand, her heart thudding so loudly she could hear it over the hum of the engine. The Phantom had stopped in front of a quiet brownstone, the kind with warm brick and iron railings, far away from the cold marble world of the courthouse. But Avery barely registered any of it. Her gaze was fixed on the sheet of paper Julian hadn't yet revealed. Before you look, Julian said gently, I want you to know something. What this document shows, it isn't your failure, it's his. Avery nodded shakily, though she wasn't sure she was ready for whatever waited inside that envelope. Her life had already unraveled twice today, once in a courtroom, once in the back of this car. But Julian handed her the paper anyway, because some truths demand to be seen. She lifted it with trembling fingers. It was a bank authorization form. Her name was printed on the header, but not her signature. Someone had forged it. The form approved the transfer of nearly all her personal savings into an account she didn't recognize. Avery's lungs seized. This can't be real. Julian nodded grimly. It's real. Grant tried to drain your savings before the divorce hearing. He forged your signature, but the bank flagged it for irregularities. Dude. Her vision blurred. He was going to leave me with nothing. Julian didn't sugarcoat it. He planned to keep you financially trapped. A woman with no income, no resources, and no support is much easier to control. Avery looked down, her hands trembling so violently she nearly dropped the paper. She remembered all the times Grant had insisted on handling the finances so she wouldn't stress. All the times he dismissed her questions with a patronizing laugh. All the moments he made her feel young, foolish, incapable. But this was not just cruelty. This was theft. This was betrayal at a level she could barely comprehend. He told me I was careless with money, Avery whispered. He said I needed him to manage everything because I wasn't too reliable. Julian's eyes softened. He wanted you to believe that, because if you felt weak, he could stay strong. If you felt lost, he could stay in control. Thanks for watching. If you wanted the next wash, she pressed her palms to her face, fighting the sob building in her chest. It wasn't just the forged signature. It wasn't just the emails. It was the realization that she had lived in a cage carefully built by the man who vowed to protect her. Julian waited quietly, giving her space, not crowding her, not telling her to calm down, just being there steady, unshaken, unthreatening. After a long moment, Avery lowered her hands, her voice raw. Why would he do this? I loved him. I gave him everything. Julian's answer was simple. Some men destroy what they don't deserve. Avery looked away, staring out the window at the streetlights, glowing softly against the brick buildings. Her reflection stared back fragile, exhausted, but beginning to sharpen. The woman looking back at her wasn't broken. She was waking up. Julian leaned forward slightly. Avery, everything he took, you can rebuild. And you won't be alone this time. She swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know where to start. Julian opened the car door beside her, letting in a breath of crisp evening air. Start by stepping out of the life he controlled, he said. I can help you from there. Avery hesitated, then nodded. She stepped one foot onto the sidewalk, feeling the city beneath her again, steady and real. But before she could take another step, her phone buzzed. A name flashed across the screen. Grant. And the message he sent made Avery's breath stop cold. Avery stared at her phone, frozen on the sidewalk as the evening breeze swept down the quiet brownstone-lined street. The screen buzzed again, the same name glowing like a warning. Grant Mercer. Julian stepped closer, concern tightening his expression. You don't have to read anything he sends. But Avery had already opened the message. It was only one line. You think you're done with me? Come home now. We're not finished. If you want know. A familiar chill crawled down her spine, the same cold fear she used to feel every time Grant's voice turned sharp behind closed doors. But tonight, something was different. She wasn't alone. She wasn't trapped. And she wasn't stepping back into his world ever again. Still, the message rattled her. Julian saw the tremor in her hand. He doesn't own you anymore, he said gently. There's nothing he can order you to do. Avery nodded, though part of her still struggled to believe it. He's angry. He knows he's losing control. Julian's jaw tightened. Good. Let him feel what you felt for years. Before Avery could respond, another message appeared. Don't make me come find you. Her chest tightened. He's never threatened me like that through text before. That's because he's panicking, Julian said. He expected you to crumble today. Instead, you walked away with dignity, and you were seen. Avery swallowed hard. He hates losing the narrative. Disaja. He already lost it, Julian replied, and he knows it. The air between them thickened with unspoken tension. Avery's instincts screamed to run, but not from fear, from the crushing overwhelm of everything unraveling at once. She drew a shaky breath. Julian, what should I do? You should block him, Julian said firmly, and let your attorney handle the rest. Avery hesitated, her thumb hovering uncertainly over the block contact button. Cutting Grant off completely felt final. It felt like closing a door she had spent years trying to escape but never actually locking. Julian noticed her hesitation. Avery, he said softly, you don't owe him a single moment more of your life. Her shoulders trembled. She exhaled, then pressed the button. The screen went silent. Julian's expression softened with something like pride. Good. But almost immediately, Avery's phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. Her blood ran cold. Avery, Julian said, let me see it. She shook her head. No, I need to. She opened the message. It wasn't text. It was a photo. A blurry, nighttime picture of the brownstone-lined street around them, taken from somewhere nearby. Avery's breath hitched. He's watching us. Julian's face darkened, his voice dropping into a low, controlled steadiness she had never heard from him before. He's crossing a line. Her pulse pounded violently. How did he even know where we were? Julian didn't have to answer. They both knew. Grant had always known how to track her credit card pings, location sharing she never consented to, subtle surveillance disguised as protectiveness. He's obsessed, Avery whispered. He won't let me go. Julian placed a reassuring hand near her arm, not touching her, but grounding her with presence alone. Avery, you are not going back to him. And you're not facing him alone. As well. Avery nodded shakily, but before she could speak, headlights swept across the street, a silver car turning the corner too slowly, too deliberately. Julian turned toward it, eyes narrowing sharply. The car didn't pass. It stopped. Avery felt her breath collapse into her chest. Because the driver's door opened and the silhouette stepping out was unmistakably Grant. Grant's silhouette emerged from the silver car like a storm front, rolling in heavy, simmering, dangerous. Avery felt her entire body tense, instinctively taking half a step back until her shoulder brushed the open door of the Phantom. Julian shifted subtly, positioning himself between her and the man who had once controlled every part of her life. Avery, Grant barked, his voice sharp enough to slice through the quiet street. Get over here, now. She froze, her pulse pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Old habits clawed their way up: fear, compliance, the instinct to shrink. But Julian's steady presence beside her cut through the panic like a warm blade. "You shouldn't be here," Julian said, his voice cool, even. "This isn't your property. And she isn't your possession." Grant let out a bitter laugh. "Save the hero speech. You think showing up with your fancy car is going to impress her? She's my wife." "Ex-wife," Avery corrected, barely above a whisper, but firm enough to make Grant's jaw tick. He took a step forward, ignoring Julian entirely, his eyes snapping to Avery with a fury she'd seen too many times. "A piece of paper doesn't erase vows. You think you can walk out on me and embarrass me in front of everyone today?" Avery's throat tightened. "Grant, go home." "No," he snarled. "You're coming with me. We're fixing this." Julian moved instinctively, blocking Grant's path. She said no. Grant glared at him. "You don't get to interfere in my marriage." Julian didn't blink. "You ended that marriage the moment you tried to destroy her career." Avery watched Grant's expression twist in shock, Julian's words hitting a nerve he didn't expect anyone else to know about. "You told her?" Grant hissed. "You think she's going to believe some billionaire who barely knows her?" Avery stepped forward then, something rising in her chest, not fear, not anger, but clarity. "He showed me the emails, Grant, the forged bank forms, everything." Grant's face drained of color. "You were trying to empty my accounts," she said, voice trembling but audible. "You were planning to leave me with nothing." He opened his mouth to lie, but Avery didn't let him. "And you told my firm I was unstable. You made them fire me." Grant shifted, panic flickering beneath his arrogance. "I did what I had to do. You were getting distracted. Your work was affecting our future." "No," she said quietly, "my work threatened your ego." "It's umber." Grant took another step toward her, desperation leaking through the cracks. "Avery, listen to me. You need me. I took care of you." "You controlled me," she whispered. Before Grant could answer, a door on the opposite side of the street opened. A neighbor peeked out, then retreated, quickly shutting the door. Curtains shifted across windows. The quiet block was waking up, sensing confrontation. Julian lowered his voice. "You should leave before this becomes a police matter. If you tell no." Grant scoffed, but the tremor in his jaw betrayed him. "You don't scare me." "You should," Julian replied calmly, "because I will not let you hurt her again." Avery felt a surge of something fierce, unfamiliar strength returning to her bones. Grant looked between them, his breathing ragged. "Avery, don't you dare walk away." She met his eyes steadily. "I already did." His expression darkened into something ugly. "You'll regret this." Julian stepped forward, voice razor sharp. "That's enough." Grant hesitated, shook his head, then retreated toward his car. But before getting in, he pointed at Avery with a trembling hand. "This isn't over." He sped away. Silence settled. Julian turned to Avery. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her body still trembled. But before Julian could say anything else, his phone buzzed sharply, and the name flashing across the screen made his expression change instantly. "Avery, it's my father. He wants to see you. Now." "Everyone." Avery sat stiffly in the back of the Phantom once more, her pulse still uneven from the confrontation with Grant. Julian had insisted she come with him, reassuring her that his father wouldn't have called unless it was truly important. But she couldn't shake the nervous flutter in her stomach. Meeting Julian Cullum's father, a man known in Manhattan as both a visionary and a storm, felt like stepping into a world she had never been allowed to approach. The Phantom glided through Midtown toward Park Avenue, where the Cullum Systems executive tower rose like a monolith of steel and white light. Avery watched the building grow closer, its sharp lines cutting into the night sky, and wondered if she was ready for any of this. Julian glanced at her as they approached the private entrance. "My father isn't someone you need to impress," he said quietly. "Just be yourself." She let out a shaky breath. "Julian, myself barely made it through today." "Aso." He offered the faintest smile. "And yet you survived it with more grace than most people could." The doors opened, and they stepped into a marble lobby so pristine it felt like stepping into a different universe. Soft lighting diffused through frosted glass panels. A grand staircase curved upward like something out of an architectural dream. Avery's eyes traced every line automatically, the old instinct of a designer resurfacing despite the chaos of her day. They were escorted to the top floor, where a private office overlooked all of Manhattan. The skyline glittered beneath them, a sea of diamonds stretching from river to river. Inside the office stood a tall man in his late 60s, silver hair perfectly groomed, posture unwavering. His presence was powerful, not loud, the kind of authority built over decades, not inherited. Thomas Colum, Julian's father. Avery Sinclair, he said, turning toward her with a slow, assessing nod. I've been waiting a long time to meet you properly. Avery's breath caught. Sir, I didn't know you even remembered me. Oh, I remembered, Thomas said. Anyone who produces work with that kind of raw intuition is unforgettable. A flush warmed Avery's cheeks. She couldn't recall the last time someone had spoken about her talent with sincerity instead of condescension. Julian stepped forward. She deserves to know everything. 18. And when does? Thomas folded his hands behind his back and paced toward the panoramic windows. 2 years ago, we selected you for the Colum Cultural Renewal Project. A landmark redevelopment, something that will define the city's artistic future for decades. Avery swallowed hard. But I never got the offer. I know, Thomas said sharply, because that husband of yours intercepted it. He responded as if he were your representative, said you were unstable, that you lacked resilience. Das very self. Avery closed her eyes for a moment, fighting the familiar ache. I never knew. We did, Thomas said, which is why the project has been on hold since. Her eyes flew open. You paused it? Because of me? Because of what was done to you, Thomas corrected. Talent cannot flourish under oppression, and it was clear someone was trying to bury yours. Avery exhaled shakily, overwhelmed. Why tell me this now? Thomas turned fully toward her. Because the board has reconvened. Because the project cannot wait any longer. And because we want you to lead it officially, publicly, and without your husband's shadow. Her knees nearly buckled. Me? Julian stepped closer, voice warm. It's always been you. Avery felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the breathtaking shock of being chosen for something she thought she had lost forever. Thomas gave a firm nod. If you accept, we begin preparations immediately. I guessed her. Avery opened her mouth to answer. But the office door suddenly swung open, and a young assistant rushed in, breathless. Mr. Colum, there's a problem downstairs. Security needs you. It's urgent. Thomas frowned. What sort of problem? The assistant hesitated, lowering her voice. It's Avery's ex-husband. He's forcing his way into the building. Avery felt the temperature in the room plummet the moment the assistant spoke. Even the panoramic view of Manhattan, glittering, sprawling, alive, seemed to freeze outside the glass. Grant wasn't just lashing out anymore. He had followed her into the one place she should have been safe. Into Julian's world. Into her future. Thomas Colum straightened, his expression shifting from composed authority to sharp, icy command. Julian, he said, voice clipped, take Avery to the conference lounge. Security will handle him. To Crescent. Julian nodded, placing a steady hand near Avery's back as he guided her toward the door. She moved mechanically, her pulse hammering in her ears. She had spent years shrinking herself for Grant, but seeing him force his way into a corporate tower, barging into a world he didn't belong in, cracked something deep inside her. He's out of control, Avery whispered as they hurried through a private hallway. What if he won't get to you, Julian said firmly. Not here, not ever again. Against Juarez. But Avery wasn't reassured. She knew what Grant was like when he felt cornered, the ugliness he hid behind charm, the fury he unleashed behind closed doors. They reached the conference lounge, a quiet, glass-enclosed space overlooking the city. Avery paced, wringing her hands. Julian stood near the door, listening for updates through his earpiece, tension radiating from every line of him. Julian, she said shakily, maybe I should go down there. Maybe if he sees me, he'll calm down. I have 4. Julian turned, eyes sharp. Avery, no. Men like Grant don't calm down when they see what they lost. They get worse. She swallowed painfully. He's never been this unhinged. What if he hurts someone because of me? Julian stepped closer, voice softening. Anyone he hurts is because of his choices, not yours. Don't carry his sins. Avery's lips trembled. She wasn't used to someone lifting blame off her shoulders. For years, everything had been her fault by Grant's design. Before Julian could say more, the door burst open, and Thomas entered, his expression thunderous. "He's demanding to speak with you," Thomas said to Avery. "Only you." Avery released a shaky breath. "I don't want to." "You won't," Thomas said. "Colum Tower is not a place for tantrums or threats, and I've instructed security accordingly." Julian frowned. "What exactly is he doing?" Thomas exhaled sharply, shouting in the lobby, claiming Avery was kidnapped, threatening lawsuits. "And now?" He hesitated. Julian's voice snapped. "And now what?" Thomas lowered his voice. "He's telling reporters outside that Avery is mentally unstable, that she's being manipulated by you, Julian. He's trying to get ahead of a narrative he can't control." Avery's stomach twisted. "He's dragging the media into this?" "He's desperate," Julian said bitterly. "And when desperate men lose control, they claw at anything they can." Avery sank into a chair, gripping the armrests. "I can't believe he would lie like that, publicly." Thomas gave a humorless laugh. "Believe it. He's trying to discredit you before the truth about his actions comes out." Julian crouched in front of her, meeting her eyes. "Avery, you don't have to face him alone. I will confront him myself." "No," Thomas interjected. "That's exactly what he wants. A public scene with someone powerful enough to amplify his lies." Julian rose, jaw clenched. "Then what do we do?" Thomas turned to Avery, his expression softening in a rare, paternal way. "You need to take control of the narrative. He fears your voice, Avery, because once you speak, his lies collapse." Avery's breath hitched. "What are you saying?" Thomas stepped aside and pointed toward the door. "Security has contained him in the lower lobby. If you want to end this, really end this, you need to face him on your terms." "Is there Fredge?" Avery stood slowly, strength returning to her limbs, one breath at a time. Julian reached for her hand. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he whispered. Avery lifted her chin. "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." They headed for the elevator, but as the doors slid open, Thomas stopped them with one final revelation. "Avery, your ex-husband isn't alone down there. He brought someone, and you're not going to like who it is. Take a step." Avery felt her stomach twist as the elevator descended toward the lower lobby. Every floor the numbers blinked past felt like peeling back another layer of the life she thought she'd already escaped. Julian stood beside her, steady and silent, while Thomas waited behind them with an expression carved from stone. But Avery couldn't shake Thomas's last words. Your ex-husband isn't alone down there. Who else could Grant possibly drag into this humiliation? Her mind raced a colleague? A lawyer? Someone from her old firm? No, none of them would make sense. The elevator chimed. The doors opened, and Avery's breath collapsed in her chest. Standing next to Grant, pale, anxious, clutching her purse like a lifeline, was Avery's mother. A woman she hadn't seen in nearly 3 years. Avery stumbled back a step. "Mom?" Her mother's eyes were already brimming with tears. "Avery, sweetheart, Grant told me you were in trouble. He said you ran off with strangers. He said you weren't well." Avery blinked in stunned silence. Her mother lived in Pennsylvania. She hated the city. She would never come to Manhattan unless the situation sounded dire or catastrophic. Grant had told her mother she was unstable, just like he told Avery's firm, just like he told his mistress, just like he told anyone who would listen. "Karen," Grant said smoothly, slipping an arm around her mother's shoulder. "I'm just trying to help her. She's confused right now, emotional." He glanced smugly at Avery. "She's being manipulated." Her mother looked between them, bewildered. "Avery, why didn't you call me? If you were struggling." "I'm not struggling," Avery said, the tremor in her voice fighting for control. "He lied to you." Grant scoffed. Of course she'd say that. This man, he jabbed a finger toward Julian, has been filling her head with God knows what. Julian stepped forward, tone razor calm. "I've told her the truth. Something you've avoided for years." Grant's expression twisted. "Stay out of this." "Or what?" Julian asked softly. The temperature seemed to drop. A security officer approached Thomas discreetly. "Sir, are we removing him?" Thomas shook his head once. "Not yet." Avery's mother wiped her cheeks. "Grant said you had a breakdown, that you attacked him, that you emptied your accounts out of spite." "Avery, I didn't know what to believe. Avery's chin quivered. I never attacked him. He tried to bankrupt me, Mom. He forged my signature. Her mother inhaled sharply, staring at Grant. Did you do that? Grant forced a laugh. Karen, don't listen to her. She's overwhelmed. No, Avery snapped, her voice suddenly clear and ringing across the lobby. I'm done being spoken over. I'm done being rewritten. People stopped. Security paused. Even Grant froze. Avery stepped forward. He told my employer I was unstable, so they'd fire me. He tried to drain my savings. He stalked me today. He lied to you because he knew you'd come running. Her mother's face crumpled, realization crashing hard. Avery, oh God. Grant's composure broke. You're humiliating yourself. You think anyone will believe you over me? I've already talked to the press outside. Thomas's voice cut through him like a blade. And that was your mistake. Experience, Grant faltered. What? Thomas gestured toward the glass entrance. Reporters were indeed outside, but now they weren't photographing Grant. They were photographing the security feed displayed on a lobby monitor, showing Grant screaming, shoving, and trying to force entry minutes earlier. Grant paled. That wasn't supposed to be public. Thomas stepped forward, voice iron. You made it public. And as of this moment, Column Systems is issuing a formal statement. Grant swallowed. A statement about what? Thomas looked at him without blinking. About your behavior. And about the evidence we've collected. Grant's eyes widened. Evidence? Avery felt Julian move closer beside her. Thomas continued. Yes. Evidence supplied this afternoon by someone who used to work for you. A beat of silence. Grant's face drained. Someone who knows everything. And then the doors at the far end of the lobby opened. A woman stepped in. Grant's former assistant, holding a folder thick enough to bury him. A hush fell over the lobby as Grant's former assistant stepped inside, heels clicking against the polished marble. The folder she carried was thick, too thick to be anything other than devastating. Avery recognized the woman instantly. Emma Rowe. Quiet, efficient, overworked. A shadow in Grant's office who moved silently, always tense, always careful. Avery remembered how Grant used to complain about her. She's clumsy, useless. I should have fired her months ago. But looking at Emma now, Avery wondered if Grant had been afraid of her all along. Emma didn't look at him. She walked straight to Thomas Colum and handed him the folder. Everything is in here, Emma said, her voice steady in a way Avery had never heard before. Emails, recordings, financial documents. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Grant snapped. Emma, what the hell do you think you're doing? She finally looked at him with a calm Avery had never seen. Telling the truth? Grant's face reddened. You're a disgruntled employee. Nothing in that folder is real. Thomas opened the folder. The first page alone made his brow lift. These are internal memos from your company, Mr. Mercer. Undeniably authentic. Grant lunged forward, but security stepped between them. Don't touch her, Julian warned sharply. Emma took one step back. You tormented Avery for years, and you tormented everyone who worked under you. You made me draft the termination email to her employer. You dictated every word. Avery's knees weakened. He made you write the email calling me unstable? Emma nodded. He didn't want to send it from his account. Told me if anything backfired, I'd take the blame. Grant barked out a laugh, but it was brittle, desperate. So what? None of that proves anything. Emma wasn't finished. She reached into her coat and pulled out a flash drive. This does. Grant's face drained. Thomas took it from her. What's on this? A recording, Emma said. One he didn't know I had. Grant lunged again. Emma, stop. Julian stepped in front of Avery, and security pinned Grant back. Thomas's voice boomed across the lobby. Play it. Within seconds, a security officer connected the drive to a small monitor. The audio crackled to life. Grant's voice filled the lobby. She's nothing without me. If I have to forge her name to keep her in line, I'll do it. And if the firm fires her, even better. She'll have nowhere to go. Avery felt something inside her go still, then break, then solidify into something she hadn't felt in years. Strength. The audio continued. I'll drain her accounts before she realizes what's happening. She won't survive a week on her own. A gasp echoed across the lobby. Avery's mother clutched her chest. My God. Grant thrashed against the guards. That recording is illegal. She had no right. Thomas looked unimpressed. Funny how men who violate every boundary suddenly care about legality. Julian moved closer to Avery, speaking softly but firmly. This is the beginning of the end for him. Avery didn't look away from Grant. For the first time, she saw him clearly not as the man she once loved, but as the small, frightened, angry thing beneath the facade. You don't own me anymore, she said, voice firm. Grant spat back. You think this changes anything? I'll destroy any future you try to build. Thomas stepped forward, eyes glinting. No, the only future being destroyed here is yours. Grant twisted, desperate, wild with panic. You can't do this. Oh yes, Thomas said calmly, we can. But before the guards could remove Grant from the building, one of the security officers approached Thomas hesitantly. Sir, there's another problem. If you want. Thomas frowned. What now? The officer pointed toward the glass doors. A new crowd was forming outside. Reporters, cameras, flashing lights. A video just leaked online, the officer said, of everything that happened here, and it's spreading fast. Avery's eyes widened. A video? He nodded. Yes, and someone posted it from an account using your name. Avery felt the room lurch as if the ground tilted beneath her. A video? Posted under her name? She shook her head, disbelief tightening her throat. I didn't post anything, she whispered. Thomas exchanged a sharp glance with Julian. Security, pull it up, he ordered. Within seconds, a nearby screen lit up. A paused video thumbnail showed the entire confrontation in the lobby, Grant shouting, being held back by guards, Emma revealing the flash drive. Everything. Avery's heart slammed against her ribs. How did someone film that? The security officer responded grimly. Someone in the lobby must have recorded it before our team locked down the floor. The angle suggests it was taken behind the security desk. We're reviewing footage now. Julian stepped closer to the screen, jaw tight. Play it. The video began. Grant's voice echoed through the speakers, loud, furious, unhinged. She belongs to me. She wouldn't even survive without me. It's not Tessent. A chorus of gasps erupted from reporters outside the glass doors. Flashing cameras stuttered like lightning. Then came Emma's voice, steady and resolute. You forged her signature. You tried to ruin her career. The clip ended abruptly, cutting before Avery's reaction or Thomas's intervention. Avery could hardly breathe. This looks like I released it, she said softly. That's why someone used your name, Thomas replied. They wanted the public to believe you retaliated. I'm the one. Grant twisted against the guards, snarling. Of course, she released it. She's always been dramatic. No, Julian cut in sharply. She didn't. And anyone who looks at the account metadata will know that. Avery felt a sickening realization creeping in. This wasn't random. Someone wanted the world to see this, but also wanted it to look like I leaked it. Emma nodded grimly. Someone who wanted to hurt Grant, but also make Avery look unstable. Grant scoffed. Why would anyone want to hurt me? Thomas looked at him like he was the world's most exhausting problem. Because you've wronged more people than you can count. The security officer approached again. Mr. Colum, we traced the account that posted the video. A tense silence fell. It was created this afternoon. Anonymous email. VPN active. No direct identifiers. Avery's shoulders slumped. But the officer wasn't finished. However, we did trace the device used. It was a phone registered to... He hesitated, glancing at Avery. Registered to who? Avery urged. The officer exhaled. Your mother. Avery staggered backward. My mom? That's impossible. She doesn't know how to upload a video. Karen's face flushed with confusion. Avery, sweetheart, I don't know anything about that. I barely know how to check my voicemail. Grant immediately seized the moment. See, she's lying. She posted it. Julian stepped forward so fast, the guards tensed. Say one more lie about her, and you'll regret it. But Avery shook her head. No, this doesn't add up. My mother wouldn't have posted anything. Someone must have used her phone. Karen gasped. My phone. It went missing for a few minutes during the drive here. I thought I misplaced it. Julian's eyes narrowed. Someone stole her phone just long enough to upload the video. Someone who rode with her. Someone who convinced her to come to Manhattan today. Avery turned slowly toward Grant. His face twisted, not with guilt, but with fear. You used my mother, Avery whispered, voice cracking. You filmed everything and posted it under my name, and hers. Grant's mask finally shattered. I needed leverage. I needed people to believe me. Avery cut him off, her voice shaking with fury she'd never felt before. You dragged my mother into this? You humiliated her? You weaponized her phone just to ruin me? Grant opened his mouth. But before he could speak, a senior security officer rushed forward, breathless. Mr. Cullum, there's been a breach. Someone accessed the restricted floors remotely. Thomas stiffened. Who? The officer swallowed hard. It appears someone hacked into the building system, using Grant Mercer's personal credentials. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Even the hum of the security monitors seemed to pause as the officer's words hung in the air. Hacked, using Grant Mercer's credentials. Avery felt a cold numbness spread through her chest. Grant's panic, however, was immediate. That's impossible, he barked. Someone's framing me. Thomas stepped closer, his eyes razor-sharp. Our systems are fully internal. External access is nearly impossible. Whoever hacked in had deep familiarity with our protocols or used someone else to get it. And security enlarged the log feed on the nearest monitor. Julian read it first, a surge of red alerts, timed precisely with the moment Grant stormed into the building. Grant, Julian said calmly, these credentials weren't stolen. They were used at the exact time you were in the lobby, causing chaos. Grant sputtered. I didn't touch anything. I don't even know your system. Emma stepped forward, arms crossed tightly. That's funny. Because you made me download a program onto your laptop last year for a meeting at Cullum Systems. You said you needed access. I didn't know what it was for, but it looks like you did. Grant whipped around, furious. You don't know what you're talking about. But the fear in his eyes betrayed him. He did know. A security officer approached Thomas urgently. Sir, the breach attempted to access the Cultural Renewal Project files. Someone tried to delete them. Avery's heart dropped. The project? Thomas's face hardened. The files were protected. The attempt failed, but someone wanted to destroy it before Avery ever got to lead it. Grant threw his hands up dramatically. Oh, come on, why would I care about some stupid design project? Julian stared him down. Because it was the one thing she could rebuild her life on, and you couldn't stand the thought of her rising without you. Grant opened his mouth, then shut it. His silence was louder than any confession. Avery felt something inside her click into place. A boundary, once buried under fear, now rising with astonishing clarity. You hated the idea of me having a future, she said softly. You were afraid of losing control. Grant snapped. I wasn't afraid. I was trying to protect our marriage. A bitter laugh escaped her lips, the first in years. Marriage? You weren't protecting a marriage. You were protecting your power. Thanks for watching. Emma added quietly, you manipulated every woman who worked for you. Every partner. Every client. But Avery was the one thing you couldn't fully control. And that terrified you. Grant lunged again, but this time guards immediately pinned him back. Let me go, he shouted. You don't understand. If her project launches, she'll... His words cracked, then spilled out in a broken, furious rush. She'll be bigger than me. A hush fell. Thomas exhaled slowly, the disappointment in his eyes unmistakable. So, that's it. Not love, not loyalty, just your ego. Grant sagged against the guards, his face drained, sweat beading at his hairline. Julian turned to Avery, his voice low. You don't need to hear any more. We can end this. But Avery surprised even herself. No, she said, stepping closer, not toward Grant, but toward the truth. I want every lie exposed, every threat, every manipulation. I want him to face exactly what he tried to make me fear. Grant glared at her, but the fire was gone. Only desperation remained. Thomas nodded. Then we'll take this further. He turned to the head of security. Call NYPD and forward the evidence folder, the recordings, and the hack logs. Grant's face went white. You're calling the police? Julian's voice was ice. You didn't just sabotage her life. You committed fraud, identity theft, corporate intrusion. You did this to yourself. The guards tightened their grip as Grant began shouting again, his voice cracking under panic. But before anyone could escort him out, another phone buzzed, sharp, urgent. It was Thomas's, he answered, listening silently. Then, his expression shifted. Grave. He looked at Avery. Avery, there's something else, something we didn't know. Her breath caught. What is it? Thomas slowly lowered the phone. The hack wasn't just an attempt to delete your project. It was sent to multiple news outlets. And they're about to publish something about you. Avery felt her throat close as Thomas lowered the phone, his expression tight with concern. The lobby's reflective marble seemed to ripple beneath her feet, as if her reality were warping again just when she thought Grant's destruction had reached its limit. What are they publishing? Avery asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Thomas shook his head. We don't know the full extent yet, but the information sent to the outlets appears to include your old medical records, personal files, and private messages taken from your devices. Avery's stomach dropped. My devices were always with me. He couldn't have. Julian interjected gently. Avery, he had access to your cloud account. Remember your old phone, the one he insisted on setting up for you? The memory hit her like a physical blow. Grant smiling, telling her she didn't need to worry about passwords, because he'd handle them. She'd believed it was kindness. It had been surveillance. He had access for years, Avery whispered, horror washing through her. He saw everything. Grant struggled against the guards, shouting, privacy is irrelevant when you're trying to help someone. She hid things. She lied. I was trying to protect. Enough, Thomas snapped. Your justification means nothing. If exhausted. Julian stepped closer to Avery. Listen to me. Whatever he sent them, we can respond. My father has PR teams, legal teams. But Avery shook her head. This isn't about PR, Julian. Those records, they're mine. Parts of my life I wasn't ready for the world to see. Her voice broke. The messages he stole were from when I was struggling. Anxiety, panic attacks, times I thought I was failing. He knew how vulnerable I was, and he kept evidence of it. Her mother pressed a hand to her chest. Avery, sweetheart. Julian's gaze softened with something deeper than sympathy, something like quiet fury on her behalf. He weaponized your pain, and now he wants to broadcast it, Avery whispered. A security officer hurried over with an urgent update. We checked several news sites. Nothing posted yet, but we found an anonymous email with attachments. The content hasn't gone live. Can we stop it? Julian asked. We contacted the outlets, the officer replied. Most are reviewing the material but haven't published. They'll hesitate once they realize the data was obtained illegally. But one outlet. He hesitated. Thomas stepped forward. Which one? The officer winced. City Pulse. They're known for sensational leaks. They're preparing a headline. Avery closed her eyes, tears forming. City Pulse was brutal. They didn't fact-check. They didn't soften anything. They exploited pain for profit. Julian knelt beside Avery, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Avery, look at me. She opened her eyes, trembling. You are not the woman he's trying to portray, Julian said, and whatever comes out, you will not face it alone. Not anymore. Avery wiped her cheek. He took everything he could, except my dignity. I won't let him take that too. Thomas's phone buzzed again. He answered sharply, listened, then exhaled. It hasn't gone live yet, he said. But City Pulse wants a comment. They say if Avery responds directly, they'll hold the story temporarily. Avery's breath caught. They want me to comment? Thomas nodded. They think you leaked the lobby video. They believe you're seeking publicity. Avery's jaw clenched. I didn't leak anything. We know, Julian said. But the public doesn't. Avery straightened. If they want a statement, she said, I'll give them the truth, not his story. Thomas nodded approvingly. We can arrange a controlled statement immediately. But sir, the security officer interrupted, eyes wide. There's another issue. Everyone turned. The officer swallowed. City Pulse wasn't the only outlet Grant contacted. A second publication was sent an even larger dump of files. Avery's voice dropped to a whisper. Which publication? The officer hesitated, then answered, The New York Ledger, and they've already opened the files. I was what? Avery felt her heartbeat ricochet through her ribs. The New York Ledger wasn't just another publication, it was one of the most respected, widely read outlets in the country. Unlike City Pulse, the Ledger wasn't known for gossip. When they published something, it carried weight, legitimacy, credibility, and Grant had given them a file dump. Her file dump. Julian stepped closer instinctively, his presence wrapping around her like a shield. What exactly did the ledger receive? He asked the officer. The guard swallowed. Everything City Pulse got, and more. They received a separate folder labeled Sinclair Evidence. Avery's blood ran cold. Evidence of what? The officer hesitated. It contains personal messages, journal entries, audio memos, anything stored on your cloud account from the past 5 years. Avery steadied herself on the conference table. Those were private. They were never meant. That was my life, my pain, my thoughts. He had no right. Grant snarled against the guards. If she insists on playing victim, the world deserves to know the truth. Julian's eyes darkened lethal, controlled fury. What you did wasn't exposing truth. You stole her privacy. You broke into her accounts. You tried to destroy her future. Grant spat back. She destroyed mine first. Avery looked at him, bewildered. I signed divorce papers quietly. I walked away. I didn't fight for your money. I didn't expose your affair. What exactly did I destroy, Grant? Grant struggled, chest heaving. My reputation. You walking out made me look weak. Avery exhaled, a long, steady release of disbelief and exhaustion. So you ruined my life because you were afraid of looking small? He glared with feral resentment. Yes. The room went still. Not one person attempted to soften what he confessed. Not one person believed he misspoke. Thomas approached Avery with unexpected gentleness. The ledger opened the files, but they haven't prepared a headline yet. That means they're sorting through everything, trying to determine if it's real. So they're reading years of my life right now, Avery whispered. Julian lowered his voice. We can fight this. My father has lawyers who specialize in privacy violations. We can freeze publication. Thomas nodded. Already in motion. But the security officer shifted uneasily. There may be a complication. Julian's head snapped up. What complication? The officer cleared his throat. The ledger's editor-in-chief received an anonymous note attached to the file dump. It said, publish everything. The world deserves to see who she really is. Avery winced. That sounds like him. Thomas shook his head slowly. Not necessarily. The note is written in a style unlike Grant's professional, calculated. Someone else may be helping him. A fresh wave of confusion washed over Avery. Helping him? Who would? Someone who benefits from your silence, Thomas said. Someone who didn't want you leading the Cultural Renewal Project. Avery stared at him. What are you saying? Someone inside the project sabotaged me? Thomas didn't answer immediately. Julian did. There were board members who disagreed with the original decision, he admitted carefully. People who wanted the project to go to a firm with more political connections. Avery's pulse quickened. So someone on your board joined Grant in trying to get rid of me? We don't know, Thomas said, but the timing is too precise to ignore. Suddenly, another notification buzzed on Thomas's phone. He checked it, then blanched. What is it? Avery asked. Thomas looked up, voice heavy. The ledger just called. They want to interview you. Live within the hour. If you refuse, they'll assume you have something to hide. Avery's throat tightened. A live interview? Tonight? Julian took her hands gently. You don't have to do it. But Avery shook her head. No, I won't let someone else define me again. Before Julian could respond, Thomas received another alert, this one flashing across the lobby monitors. A new headline appeared on the Ledger's website. Breaking. Leaked files. Raise questions about Avery Sinclair's stability. Avery staggered. But then, another update flashed immediately beneath it. This headline was posted from inside our newsroom, not by our staff. Julian's eyes widened. Someone had hijacked the Ledger's system, and they had published the headline themselves. Avery had never seen a newsroom's internal system hacked in real time. The headline appeared, disappeared, reappeared, then flickered like a warning flare. It wasn't just sabotage anymore. It was war. Thomas barked orders into his phone. Julian wrapped a steadying arm behind Avery without touching her, a silent anchor. Security scrambled, reporters shouted from outside, and the Colum Tower lobby buzzed with electricity. But amid the chaos, a new message lit up on the lobby monitor. Miss Sinclair will appear tonight at the Plaza Gala for a live statement. Julian froze. Avery, did you authorize that? She shook her head. I didn't even know there was a gala tonight. Thomas swore under his breath, rare and sharp. Someone wants you in a public arena where they can control the narrative. Avery's pulse spiked. The plaza is going to be filled with press, donors, city officials. And enemies, Julian muttered. But Thomas lifted a hand. It could also be an advantage, a controlled environment. Many of the Ledger's board members will be there. If you speak directly, you could shut down their stability narrative before it spreads. Avery looked between them. You think I should go? Julian hesitated deeply, visibly. Only if you want to, because if you step into that ballroom tonight, the whole city will be watching. There's no turning back. Avery inhaled slowly. Grant dragged my name through the mud today. The board doubted me. The press is already circling. She straightened, voice firming. If they want to watch, then they're going to see the truth. Thomas nodded approvingly. I'll arrange a secure entrance. If it mended, Julian searched her face for fear, but instead found resolve. Then, I'm with you, all night. Avery gave him a grateful, shaken smile. And, 2 hours later, the Plaza Hotel glowed like a golden jewel against the Manhattan skyline. Limousines lined the entrance, gowns shimmered beneath chandelier light, and the red carpet looked like a river of fire. Avery stepped out of the Phantom, wearing a simple but elegant black gown loaned by a Column stylist. She felt powerful, not because of the dress or the cameras flashing wildly as she approached, but because for once, she wasn't hiding. Whispers rose the moment she entered the ballroom. That's Avery Sinclair. Isn't she the one from the leaked video? She looks completely fine to me. She's with Julian Colum? Julian stayed close, not protective, but supportive. An equal, not a savior. Thomas approached them with several board members in tow, their faces curious, analytical. One of them, a distinguished woman in a navy silk gown, studied Avery closely. You're the designer Thomas kept the project on hold for. Avery met her gaze steadily. Yes. And I intend to show you it was worth the wait. Several board members exchanged looks impressed ones. For the first time all day, Avery felt the ground shift in her favor. But then, a scream erupted from the ballroom entrance. People turned, cameras snapped, energy spiked. A figure stumbled into the gala, breathless, hair disheveled, clothes half-torn. For a moment, Avery didn't recognize her. Then she did. Emma Rowe, Grant's former assistant, trembling, terrified, eyes searching the crowd until they landed on Avery. Avery, she cried out, you're not safe. Julian grabbed Avery's arm. What happened? Emma shook violently. Someone followed me after I left the tower. They tried to grab me, they said, if I didn't hand over the rest of the files. She broke off, tears streaking down her face. A hush fell as the crowd absorbed her words. Someone else was hunting the evidence. Someone worse than Grant. Emma clutched Avery's hands desperately. Avery. It wasn't Grant behind the Ledger headline hack. Avery's breath caught. Then who? Emma's voice cracked. Someone on the Column board. And they're here tonight. I knowed her. For a moment, the entire ballroom froze, as if the chandeliers themselves were holding their breath. Emma's trembling words rippled through the air like shockwaves. Someone on the Column board. Someone powerful. Someone inside Julian's world. Avery's pulse throbbed so loudly, she barely heard the live orchestra falter. Julian stepped in front of Avery instinctively, scanning the room with a controlled sharpness. Emma, he said quietly, who followed you? Emma wiped her eyes, her hands still clutching Avery's. I didn't see their face. They wore a mask, but they kept saying the same thing. Where are the rest of the files? I told them I'd given everything to Mr. Column, but they wouldn't believe me. Thomas pushed through the crowd, his expression uncharacteristically shaken. Emma, you're safe here. This hotel has private security. Tell us exactly what happened. Emma's voice cracked. They said the Ledger headline wasn't supposed to go up yet. They said someone had jumped the gun, and now they had to clean up the mess. I ran the moment they let me go. A murmur swept through the ballroom. Someone had hacked the Ledger's system. Someone with access. Someone with motive. Someone who needed Avery destroyed. Thomas's jaw clenched. If this is true, the breach wasn't just an act of malice. It was strategic. Someone wants Avery discredited before the project relaunches. If you want a G, trust. Avery shook her head. But why would someone on the board want to sabotage me? The project hasn't even been made public yet. Thomas looked at her grimly. Because the cultural renewal project is worth hundreds of millions in long-term contracts. Influence, partnerships, prestige. Not everyone wanted an independent designer to lead it, especially one chosen for talent instead of politics. Julian turned to his father sharply. Who on the board would go this far? Thomas didn't answer. Not immediately. Instead, his eyes swept across the room. The donors, the executives, the glittering gowns and tuxedos. Avery followed his gaze, her heart tightening as she realized she had stepped into a ballroom full of strangers. But one of them wasn't a stranger after all. One of them had already tried to destroy her. Emma tugged Avery's arm gently. There's one more thing. The masked person. Before they ran, they said something else. Avery braced herself. What did they say? That Avery wasn't supposed to accept the project, Emma whispered. That the board had already promised it to someone else, someone they'd been grooming for months. Avery felt her stomach drop. Someone who wanted my spot. Julian's eyes darkened. Someone who was furious when she got it. The orchestra started playing again, but the music felt wrong, tense, hollow, like a warning layered in melody. Suddenly, the ballroom doors opened, and a tall woman in a satin silver gown entered, flanked by donors and executives. The crowd parted for her effortlessly. Her presence commanded attention, polished smile, impeccable posture, a confidence sharpened like a blade. Avery recognized her from board meetings she never attended but had heard about through whispers. Marisa Thornwell, renowned architect, power broker, and the woman who had lobbied aggressively to secure the cultural renewal project for her own firm. Her eyes scanned the room until they locked onto Avery, and the smile she offered wasn't friendly. Thomas muttered under his breath, "Of course." Julian stepped closer to Avery. "She's been against you from the beginning." Avery swallowed hard. "Do you think she?" "Not think," Thomas said. "No. Do office." Marisa approached with slow, deliberate steps, champagne glass in hand, her expression poised, elegant, dangerous. "Miss Sinclair," she purred, "I was hoping to speak with you tonight. I understand you've had quite a day." Avery stiffened. Some of it was unexpected. Marisa nodded. "Well, you'll find this city can be unforgiving when ambition isn't managed properly." Julian bristled. "If you have something to say, Marisa, say it." Marisa tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Only that not everyone believes Avery is fit to lead a project as consequential as ours." Avery lifted her chin. "And some people will do anything to make sure of that." Marisa's smile twitched the first crack in her perfect composure. But before she could respond, the ballroom lights flickered, then dimmed. The orchestra stopped mid-note. A hush fell. A voice crackled over the hotel's speaker system. A distorted voice. Calm. Cold. "Avery Sinclair. Step forward. It's time the truth about you finally comes out." The ballroom plunged into a low, eerie glow as the chandeliers dimmed. Gasps rippled through the crowd, glasses clinked nervously, and the orchestra fell silent mid-note. Avery felt every muscle in her body tense. The distorted voice echoed again, vibrating through the marble columns. "Avery Sinclair, step forward." Julian immediately moved in front of her. "Don't. It's a setup." But Avery wasn't sure she could hide anymore. Not after everything. Not after years of being silenced by Grant and hours of being hunted by unseen enemies. Thomas strode toward the nearest security post. "Find the source." "Now," the voice continued, steady and chillingly controlled. "Tonight the city deserves to know who Avery really is. What she hides, what she fears." Marisa Thornwell's lips curled with restrained satisfaction, as though she were witnessing the inevitable unraveling of a rival. Avery met her gaze and saw something unmistakable. Triumph. Emma clung to Avery's arm. "That's the same voice that chased me. Same cadence, same tone." Julian's jaw clenched. "Someone hacked the hotel's sound system. That requires serious access." "Or inside help," Thomas muttered darkly. The massive projector on the ballroom's far wall flickered to life. The crowd turned as a grainy video appeared, not the lobby footage, but something far more personal. Avery's breath caught. It was her. In her old apartment. Sitting alone on the edge of her bed, crying silently into her hands. Grant had recorded her without her knowing. During her worst nights, her lowest moments. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. He wouldn't. But she already knew he would. The ballroom fell silent, except for the distorted voice. This is the woman they want to lead Manhattan's renewal. A woman too fragile to manage her own life. As for Avery, felt a wave of humiliation threaten to swallow her. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room, pitying, judging, curious. Grant. Grant had filmed her. Grant had kept these videos. Grant had leaked them. Julian stepped closer, voice low and fierce. "Don't look at the screen, Avery. Look at me." But the video continued. Her shaking hands, her whispered apologies to herself, her panicked breathing, her grief used as a weapon. The voice thundered again. How can she lead a landmark project when she can't even lead herself? The projection suddenly cut to a close-up of Avery's tear-streaked face, a raw moment she had never shared with anyone. A murmur rose through the ballroom like a growing storm. Thomas slammed a fist onto the security console. "Shut it off. Cut the feed." "We're trying, sir," a guard replied urgently. "The system is locked out." Julian turned, rage igniting behind his eyes. "Whoever is doing this, they're in the building." Marisa Thornwell took a small sip of champagne, voice laced with venom. "It's tragic, really. Some people simply aren't built for pressure." Avery snapped her head toward her. Something inside her, cracking open, not fear, not shame, but fire. "You think weakness is something to mock?" Avery said, her voice trembling but rising. "Then you've never rebuilt yourself from the ground up." Marisa raised a brow. "You call this rebuilding?" "No," Avery said. "This is surviving." Julian touched her hand gently, grounding her. "Avery." But she stepped forward, facing the crowd the first time she had ever chosen to stand alone under a spotlight she didn't ask for. "Most of you have lived your lives behind walls of privilege," Avery said, louder, steadier. "Maybe you've forgotten what pain looks like." The room shifted. People leaned in. "But I haven't," she continued. "And I won't apologize for being human." The projector abruptly flickered again. A new image appeared. Not Avery. Not Grant. A different face entirely. Ivory hair. Cold eyes. Cunning smile. Marisa Thornwell. Avery froze. "What?" The distorted voice returned. But this time, it wasn't distorted at all. It was perfectly clear. And it wasn't Grant. "Enough lies, Marisa. Time they see what you did." The ballroom erupted into chaos as Marisa Thornwell's face filled the projector screen. Her icy composure cracked for the first time all evening. She spun toward the sound booth, barking orders, but nothing changed. Her image remained, glowing across the plaza's gilded walls. Then a second video began to play. Not grainy, not stolen. Perfectly clear. Marisa seated at a conference table, leaning in toward two unknown executives. Her voice was unmistakable. "If Avery Sinclair gets the project, we lose our leverage with the city, so we bury her. Quietly, thoroughly, and with no loose ends." A collective gasp swept the ballroom. Marisa lunged toward the projector. "Turn it off. This is illegal." Thomas stepped forward. "You mean like hacking the ledger's servers? Like leaking private medical files? Like stalking and attacking an employee?" Marisa's face drained of color. "I did no such." But the video continued. "We'll use Mercer. He's desperate enough. Feed him everything he needs to destroy her image. Then, when his mess is big enough, we discredit him too." Avery staggered, stunned. "You used Grant?" Julian's eyes simmered. "She orchestrated everything." Marisa's mask fully shattered. "You think a nobody like you deserves to lead a multi-million-dollar project? You think talent matters in this city? Power is what matters. Power and connections." Julian stepped between her and Avery. "And you've just lost both. If you're Ashantares." Security moved in as more footage played. Documents, voice memos, emails. Marisa thought she had wiped clean. Evidence of her involvement in the ledger breach. Evidence of her attempt to delete Avery's project. Evidence of the masked attack on Emma. Emma's voice trembled but carried strength. "She was the one who followed me. Her perfume, her shoes, I recognized them when she entered the gala." Marisa snapped. "Lies. You're all lying." But the room had already turned against her. Board members whispered. Donors backed away. Phones came out to record. Her empire was collapsing right before her eyes. Thomas nodded to security. Escort her out and contact NYPD Cybercrimes Unit. Charges will follow. Marisa shrieked as the guards seized her arms. You fools. She'll ruin the entire project. She's unstable. She's weak. Avery stepped toward her, voice soft but devastating. No, I'm resilient, and today, I proved it. Marisa's struggles slowed. Her face twisted in a mixture of hatred and disbelief before security dragged her out of the ballroom. The doors slammed behind her with a finality that seemed to echo justice itself. A hush settled. Then applause. Soft at first, then rising, then overwhelming. Avery felt her vision blur, not with shame this time, but relief. Release. Julian turned to her, pride shining in his eyes. Avery, you ended it. On your terms. She exhaled shakily. For the first time in years, I feel free. Is it Tommen? Thomas placed a steady hand on her shoulder. And now that truth has prevailed, I'd be honored if you would officially lead the Cultural Renewal Project. Tears filled her eyes. Yes, I will. The crowd erupted again. Julian stepped closer, a rare tenderness softening his features. There's one more thing, if you'll let me say it. Avery looked up, heart steady for the first time. Julian? He took her hand publicly, confidently, with no hesitation. Avery Sinclair, I don't want to just stand beside your career. I want to stand beside your life, if you'll have me. A gasp swept the ballroom. Avery's breath caught joy, disbelief, and something achingly hopeful unfurling inside her. She squeezed his hand. Yes, she whispered, I will. Julian smiled, an honest, unguarded smile reserved only for her. Cameras flashed, applause rose. The city outside glittered as if celebrating with them. Tonight, Avery didn't reclaim her dignity. She claimed her future. And for the first time in years, she stepped into it with love, power, and a life that finally belonged to her. So, that's how the story ends. And if you are still here with me right now, it means something in Avery's journey touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe you've met a Grant before. Maybe you've had to rebuild yourself when no one believed you could. Or maybe, just maybe, you're standing at the edge of your own new beginning. The Stoics used to say, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength begins there. Avery's story reminds us of exactly that. People may try to control you, define you, or silence you, but the moment you reclaim your voice, everything changes. Healing is not loud, it's not glamorous. It's simply choosing, again and again, not to let someone else write your story. And hey, if you're here, listening, breathing with me in this moment, maybe life is inviting you to rise a little higher too. If this story gave you courage, clarity, or even just a small spark of hope, let us know. Like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to our channel so you never walk these journeys alone. We're right here with you, always.